Those TIE fighters are going to hide when they see Poe Dameron's recognizable ride. Here's your look at the Jazzwares Star Wars, the Micro Galaxy Squadron, Poe Dameron's T70 X-Wing. The Starfighter Class Series 3 box set is the best way to complete your Star Wars Micro Galaxy Squadron collection. If you were unable to grab every vehicle and micro figure accessory when they launched in stores, then this set was made specifically for you. I guess when it comes to taking out targets, X marks the spot. Just before, of course, we get a closer look at the Micro Galaxy Squadron Poe Dameron's T70 X-Wing, I'd like to thank the folks over at Jazzwares that provided the sample we could have a look at. Even though all of the Starfighters are sold separately in stores, if you aren't having any luck to try to track these down and you're a big fan of the Micro Galaxy Squadron, you can do also as well the simpler, maybe more cost-effective route by heading over to Jazzwares Vault's site. They're in fact selling all 5 Starfighters for $100. Unfortunately, though, the set is limited to only 1,500 pieces, and they're limited to 2 per person. So if you want to get these, you may want to jump on them fast. Back to, though, Dameron's T70 X-Wing, you're looking at the length of it. If I go from the end of the thruster to the front of its snout, would you still call it a snout? It's 5.5 inches exactly, or it's going to be, if I flip this around, it's going to be about 14, no, actually, it's going to be 15 centimeters long. As for a comparison of starfighters, let's slide over the X-Wing for Poe Dameron. We're bringing the Jedi starfighter that belonged to Anakin Skywalker. I don't actually have yet the landing gears out, so I'm just going to fold these out. I've left off the hyperspace ring as well. Also, too, if you're looking at the front landing gear and you had a problem to get this out, initially I was using a knife in the review, but there's a lip right there. You get your screwdriver just underneath that. It's the easiest way to remove the front landing gear. Although it doesn't still lock in place very well, it a lot of times just snaps back in place. But at least it makes things a whole lot easier of getting the landing gear out. From a size standpoint, they're almost about the same length. Obviously, though, when you're looking at the X-Wing does win by having a little bit wider of a wingspan. Of course, the Micro Galaxy Squadron does also come included with micro-sized figures. This time around, you get yourself a Pilot Poe Dameron and you get BB-8. I still have kept them inside of their plastic prison. We're going to be opening up the back of it. It's just a case of actually folding down the back, pulling out the tray. But when you're pulling out the tray, don't pull it this way. Whatever you do, it's just going to cause the figures to fall. It's already happened a couple of times. You want to make sure you flip them up, as it's a whole lot easier, and you know exactly where they end up going. So we'll just pop out BB-8, and we also get ourselves a little tiny Poe Dameron. I'm going to compare it with, as well, another Micro Squadron Series 3 figurine. Here's what he looks like. If I get my finger out of the way, get your finger out of the way. Here's what he looks like also with Anakin Skywalker. About the same size of figure. Poe Dameron, just because he has the helmet on his head, he's going to be a little bit higher of a figure, but they also have surprisingly some decent poseability. Doesn't seem to be the case that they have anything in the head, but you can at least move their arms forward and back. When you tend to move one arm, you'll already see it moves the other one. You can also as well bend their legs. That's more so to sit inside the cockpit. There is also going to be, in an upcoming review, just a FYI, we're also going to be looking at the limited run, which I think is a chase run to 5,000 pieces of the white X-Wing. That's also come included with more casually dressed Poe Dameron and the same BB-8. Nicely detailed, though. The oranges, and again, the little straps he has on his leg for his figure this size. I think they've done a really nice job on this. You also as well get yourself BB-8. Picking up BB-8 right now so you guys can see what that looks like. BB-8 doesn't roll for obvious reasons, but it does have a hole on the bottom of its body, more to sit inside the opening there at the top. I guess the opening there where he is stored in the X-Wing. And basically it's just going to sit inside that hole. So while he doesn't roll, he does certainly look like BB-8. Doesn't have, again, any poseability for the head. Decent, though. Very, very nicely done on these. Very small figures, though. Of course, if you do want to put them inside the X-Wing, the section right here is, again, going to be exposed and open here to take BB-8. So you're going to take yourself a little hole there, and it's going to fit inside the peg. Just pop BB-8 in place. Make sure it's all the way in there. So does it survive the blizzard test? It does. Then you open up the cockpit, and you just, to get that in there, you just going to get your finger, there's a little lip right there, just get your finger around the canopy, open that up. Nicely detailed also on the inside, even though, again, there's no paint applications or sticker applications at all. And then you're going to take yourself your Poe Dameron, bend the legs. You want to make sure the arms also are up as well. Just bend the legs and then fit Poe Dameron inside. Generally, when it comes to now moving forward and displaying these, because this is the kind of my first real chance to have a look at these Micro Galaxy figures, I likely will just end up displaying them inside the actual starships. Makes no real sense to have them alongside it. I mean, sure, it looks good if you want to display them like that, but I mean, the off chance that one just happens to fall off my shelf, my cat's going to claim it in seconds. Folding up, though, the landing gears, and we'll do that also on the backs there as well. And looking at, though, the closer look at the X-Wing. Now, again, this is the T70 X-Wing. I do actually kind of like the darker colors, while more being the traditionalists loving the white color scheme, or kind of that off-white that we get with the original X-Wings. There's something to be said about having this more in a darker gray. Things like, for example, the stripes on the sides here in orange and on the top look, though, to pop a lot more with the backdrop more of a darker coloring like this. Decent. You got some little engine covers there on the back, or the engine area there of the starship. That's painted nicely there as well in silver. And again, like if you look at the front, you got the front engines there, the front thrusters. You got the side little cannons there on the side. These are a little more of a thinner plastic, so you want to just be a little bit more careful with that. But again, nice looking starship. Really like the way that this one turned out. Again, you got the thrusters on the back. Unlike, though, Anakin's starship. I keep calling these starships, starfighters. Unlike his, though, this actually does have at least the back thrusters painted there in pink. I wish, though, like, again, when looking at Anakin's, just looking at the back of his, if they had only gone in and painted those in blue, because it just looks like, because again, like the hyperspace transport ring had the additional blue that was painted onto it, you think they would have also done the same there for Anakin's back thrusters. But at least it's painted there on the back of Poe Dameron's X-Wing fighter, and does, again, look really nice. Obviously, I'm sure you guys will be curious to know, does this actually open up? And the answer is yes. You just take the sides, you basically just fold them up like this. It's probably the easiest just to kind of hold on to one section and just fold it out like that. It snaps in place in two places. So like once you get to about here, it snaps once, and then you kind of bring it up again and it snaps sort of in place. But you don't want to pull any further past that point. The last snap you'll hear after that, though, is the vehicle braking. You don't want that to happen. For the fact that things like this you would never really be able to see, like they painted the stripes on the inside, but obviously you would see that if you're seeing the ship from the front. But you may not, though, be able to see all the additional molding that they sculpted on the inside, the interior of the thrusters, and that looks really cool, the fact that they would have taken the time to do that. When it comes, though, to displaying it, I'm going to likely display it with the X-Wings out like this, just because I think when I tend to think of X-Wing, I always think of the wings always out like this. Again, you got some really nice silver there. That's kind of not even really silver. It's a very nice light gray. Paint, again, very nicely applied. The paint's, ironically enough, matches the orange there on BB-8s. I'm sure that's intentional. Again, you got some nice panel lining there they've done for the gray for the front canopy. Really a nice looking ship. Again, we are going to be looking, though, at Poe Dameron's other X-Wing, and that's going to be a Chase exclusive. But I did want to kind of start things worth more, I guess the more the regular released X-Wing. It's a nice looking vehicle. Again, there are no display stands for this, but at least unlike, though, Anakin's, if you wanted to display Anakin, though, with the hyperspace transport ring, which just happen to have it off to the side here, that would be the one thing that then really calls for a display stand. I don't think if you have the vehicles displayed without that, they easily just stand on their own. The only other thing, though, too, is when you're also taking yourself out the landing gears, you probably would be also asking, would the landing gears work with the X-Wing's wings out? Just fold these down. And again, when you do snap these out, when you do pull them out, there's like almost like a spring release on the inside. But when you're also bringing them out, too, you can also see that the landing gears kind of tilt inward as opposed to straight out, just because, again, like the configuration now of the wings. But the landing gear, again, allows then the ship to stand pretty decently. You know, again, it's going to be resting on that and not necessarily resting on the wings themselves. Of the two that we've looked at so far, with many more still to follow, I really like to look at Poe Dameron's T70 X-Wing. While not being the traditional colors of what I think of when it tends to be when X-Wings, I always think of like the first original trilogy with the X-Wings being more an off-white. I gotta say, like the gray and the orange work really well with this particular vehicle. Even though I did make the mistake of mixing fandoms. Not starships, but the starfighters, courtesy of the Jazzwares Star Wars Micro Galaxy Squadron, specifically Series 3. The thing I really like about them is the fact that they include micro figures. I don't really have plans to have the micro figures loose and on display because even though it looks good to have Poe Dameron with the open cockpit of the X-Wing alongside him, the risk of him being lost, especially even the droids, I would rather just put them inside the cockpit. But I like from a standpoint, if you're one that likes to play with your toys, like if you're still a kid or you're a kid at heart and you like to play with your star fighters, the idea of being able to open up the cockpit and have the little tiny figurine taken out, and even the fact that they have poseability possessed in tiny little frames like that, I think are nice little touches that Jazzwares didn't necessarily need to include. Like an X-Wing on its own, they could have easily just released one that had the poseability of the landing gears with the X-Wings being able to open up, an accordion. but then including little micro figures with just the icing on the cake. Now, again, this is Series 3, though. That gives me at least a painful reminder that I'm well behind collecting this line. Still have to get Series 1 and Series 2. Distribution hasn't been the greatest here, unfortunately, here in Canada. I saw, like, the Millennium Falcon once at a local Toys R Us, and I never saw it again. The unfortunate thing also about it means that the prices have now started to increase on these because maybe collectors that missed the chance to get the Series 1 and Series 2 are all kind of now going back and playing catch up. It means that all of the individual vehicles have now started to skyrocket in third party, like aftermarket places like eBay. But one good thing that Jazwares has done, at least for Series 3, I don't know if they've done it for the earlier seasons, because the vault, the whole idea of Jazwares Vault's a pretty new idea, is that instead of trying to track down the individual sets, the individual vehicles that make up Series 3, specifically as well, like the chase vehicles, because even though we are looking at the darker gray schemed Dameron T70 X-Wing here in this review, they did also release a white version of the X-Wing, but that's limited to 5,000 pieces. And if you can't find that in obviously local stores, and you don't want to pay the prices that eBay's selling things like that for instead online, the easiest thing, again, you can do is get the entire set of 5. Even though we are really looking at these all individually in these reviews, I did want to kind of spend a little bit more time talking about the things I like about each of the individual vehicles, as opposed to just banging through all the 5 vehicles in one video. But if you did want to get these and you haven't had any luck to find them, again, you can click the link down below. It will take you to Jazwares Vault's site. And for $100, you can get the entire set of Series 3 Starfighters. That includes, so far, the 2 we've already had a look at. That also includes the other 3 that we've yet to look at, all for $100. It's limited, though, to 2, so you can only get the box set of 2 of them. So I don't think you're probably going to be, unless you're probably buying with the idea of selling more of them off, don't do that. Leave them for the other collectors out there to be able to get their hands on them. But if you want to get a set of 2 of these, one set so you can keep them sealed, the other set so you can have them loose and on display. Even though I do like the idea of keeping things sometimes sealed, the benefit of this line specifically is the playability of them. The fact that you can move the wings, open and close them, you can extend out the landing gears. And the best thing, again, is the fact that they have the micro figures that you can take out. And if you are one that likes to play with your toys, it's a best line of Star Wars vehicles out there, because they're also of a smaller size too. So they take up a lot of space on a shelf. Big thank you once again to the folks over at Jazwares that did provide the sample of the Star Wars Micro Galaxy Squadron Series 3. Again, even though it is really technically part of the Starfighter Class Series 3 box set, I did want to look at these all individually. So we're going to be looking at the remaining 3 in upcoming reviews. Making sure, of course, you're not missing out on any of that. If you did certainly enjoy this video, I want to do it a solid of throwing a like. If you want to stick around, though, for the remaining reviews of the other 3, hit the subscribe button down below as well and turn on the bell notification. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.